In today's video, I want to talk about the topic I talked about in the recent streams. It's about the polyphony mode of the grid and how you can utilize it to your advantage by building just a small patch and then create multiple instances of this patch by using multiple voices, and then change each voice differently, and you get much more out of just one patch with multiple voices. And it's not possible from within the grid. You need to trigger multiple voices from outside the grid, but there are multiple possibilities, of course, in Bitwig Studio. I want to show you all of them. So let's start and maybe switch over here to my desktop so you can see how it looks like in Bitwig. So we have here the beta version of Bitwig Studio, but this works in all Bitwig versions with the grid in it. So what we need is, of course, a Pulley grid. And for me, the default mode for Pulley mode is Pulley grid is the mono here. As you can see in the inspector on the left side, it's a mono mode, which means we only have one instance running when we press a key. When we press multiple keys, all the other keys are basically muted and we only hear the last key we are pressed. So it's monophonic, right? So when we build something inside the grid here in monophonic mode, we don't need an ADSR to keep the voice alive. The voice, or this one voice, is always active. So when we use maybe a gates here to trigger something, an AD, maybe a sine oscillator, and we hook this up here, maybe use an audio out. And then maybe use the pitches here. It's a nice thing to do. Maybe you can draw in here some random melody. It's not really important for the sake of this tutorial. So maybe we use here my beloved scale. Hook this up. Turn this down. I use my headphones. And let's connect these two here. So now we have like a patch running without using keyboard or piano roll or anything. And what we do now is we switch this to a polyphonic mode here. We have now two voices available we can use, and you can see the patch basically stops running. The reason for that is the grid now uses the envelope modulators here to see if one voice or some voice is still active. And when there's no active voice available, then everything is muted. So to trigger at least one voice, we need some input from the outside, maybe a key from the keyboard, or maybe a note from the piano roll. It doesn't matter. And in this iteration of the grid, I think in the beta, I disabled here the precord for the gates, and also when I disabled the precords for the pitch input here, I can still trigger this grid, which should not be possible, but it's possible. I don't know if it's a bug or if I'm completely wrong. But when I press a key on the keyboard now, I can start this grid, at least with one voice. When I press the second key, now we have two voices running, but they're playing the same melody in the same speed and so on. So what we're trying to do is, maybe let's stop this here. As you can see, when I pull down here the decay setting, it's muting then all the voices, and this happens because when you select here the envelope, you can affect the voice lifetime. Maybe you can pull down here the decay setting. So basically the audio stream that goes through the envelope is analyzed, and when there's no audio stream, Bitwig mutes the voice. So this is basically the the analyzing part which decides if is a voice active or not. And you can change this on envelopes here. I think you can also change this on the output. There's an affect voice lifetime switch here. Yeah, just to explain why this happens. So now we have one voice. You can trigger this with the keyboard, and the pitch input from the keyboard is not so important. It's more basically it's important that you trigger multiple voices. So you press 2 keys on the keyboard, or you paint 2 notes on the piano roll, and you can create 2 instances of this patch, which plays the same melody and the same speed and the same gate signals and so on. And what we now trying to do is to differentiate between these 2 instances with modulations. So one voice plays one melody and the other voice plays a different melody. And we can do this by, for instance, using the pitch input here. Because when I press 2 keys, they have probably different pitch informations or different values of pitch. And you can see this by, now oscilloscope should not work in the polyphony mode. Maybe I use and select, and the pitch decides which input we use. So maybe we use also here a phase input and the reverse, and also the try input. So now we have the phase input here in input check 1 and the reverse signal on input check 2. And which one we take decides the pitch from the keyboard. And now our mission is basically to tweak this pitch input signal, so we select one or the other. And you can do this by using a volume knob. So all this does is basically takes the signal, and we can raise or amplify the signal and spread it out even more. So when I press now 2 keys on the keyboard, I'm using here C3, which is important. C3 is exactly 0 in the grid. So this gives us a signal of 0 in the pitch input, and then maybe we take here 1 octave higher, and then we go here to loop mode. We make this a bit slower. Yeah, it's okay. And now we try to, yeah, you can see we have now selected here 2 inputs at the same time. So this is voice 1 and this is voice 2 now. And what we need to do here is we need something that affects the voice lifetime. So maybe I implement here an ADSR. It's a bit longer with the pitch input from the with gate input from the outside. So now we keep the voices alive with this one here for a longer amount of time, and you can see we have now 2 voices active, and you can see we're playing here the same pitches pattern, but in different directions. So instead of 1 voice, we have now 2 voices playing the same patch, but with different modifications. What we can do now is also duplicate this here, and instead of the phase input, we maybe change also the octave which we are playing in. So maybe, yeah, let's do this. And then we have the same, but 1 octave higher. And we select the input here also via the pitches. So now one voice plays reversed 1 octave higher, and the other one plays the default octave and forward. Okay, so what we can do now is we can exchange here the select. Maybe let's turn this down. We can exchange the select module for a merge module. And we can go for 3 inputs. We also need 3 voices now. And maybe for the third voice we use here scalars. We change the playback speed. And for the pitch we go here 1 octave higher. So, okay. So now we need something to change here for the input, because the volume input, or the volume spread out for the input of the notes worked quite well for just having select and 2 voices, but for 3 voices we need to spread out the octave a bit more evenly. So what I'm doing here is using just a multiply and multiplying it by roughly 10. What this does is basically I'm taking the octave from C3, which is 0 or value 0 inside the grid, to C4, which is, I don't know, 0.1 or something. Multiply this everything by 10, which gets basically C3 is still 0, because 0 times 10 is still 0. But we amplify all the above notes basically in terms of value much higher, so we can spread out everything here between 0 and 1, which is here probably when I switch here to which is when I have normalize active. So I put this in here, also in here, switch to nearest, and now we need 3 notes between C3 and C4. Maybe use one here, so I try to spread out evenly. So basically this is my range from 0 to 1. This is what I'm trying to achieve here. So we have now 3 active voices. As you can see, all 3 LEDs are lighting up. And now we have also, you can see 3 columns here playing. It sounds a bit weird, but it kind of works for now. What we need to do now is, because the playback speed is different here, the playback speed for the gates are still the same for every instance. So we need to change this also here. Maybe switch this off and go in here. So now we have also 3 voices playing here with the gates. For all the voices. So let's listen to this. So this kind of is interesting enough, because now we have just one pitches module that defines all the notes, but we playing this pattern basically in different rhythms or in different speeds and also in different directions. Which, if you are familiar with the app on iOS, I think it's called Fugue. Which does basically the same. You have a pattern and you play it in different speeds and different directions, and you get nice rhythms out of this. And you can clone this device, this merge device here, to everywhere in your patch. and use this to differentiate between each voice. So you can say maybe I want to use different modulations for different things on each voice. Maybe use a modulator out here. Right, we want to maybe modulate here the skew, and you can now dial in for each voice different value. So each voice has a different skew modulation now. Or clone this over and use it maybe here for... So now you get basically different AD settings for each voice. So in this way you can make a simple patch pretty complex just by using multiple note inputs. There's also the possibility to, instead of using here the notes, we use maybe just one note, go inside the grid here in the note FX and use a multi-note output. So we have our first note here, maybe go to 7. And have the same outcome basically, just with one note. If you don't like the note at all and you want to still have an self-playing patch, then you can use here the replacer, which outputs MIDI notes, and you can see here we have the key of C3, and then just use a sine, or how is it called, test device, test tone, and just bring down here the threshold. You can define a button here and say use this button and call it, for instance, play, and modulate here the threshold down, and every time we press this nothing happens. So now you have basically a self-playing patch without notes, anything, but it's polyphonic. And you can use this to, yeah, make these kind of interesting patterns out of just one pitch module. Maybe go to 16 here. Also quite interesting is maybe use here a quantizer, and I can use here all the notes from the scale maybe for one thing, but we can also maybe use different parts of the scale here. For different voices. So you can spread out different notes here and use them for different reasons, maybe for bass line and the melody and so on. So you can simplify certain parts. Yeah, this is basically what I wanted to show you. So you can make out of a simple patch much more complex things. So yeah, that's it. Switching back here to my... So I hope it wasn't too complicated this time. I try to explain everything as simple as possible. Try out to build this patch yourself. It's a nice technique. You get nice results out of it. And if you have problems building it, then keep asking questions here in the comments or in my Discord. The link is in the description below. Yeah, I want you all to become nice grid pros and to become addicted to the grid and Bitwig Studio itself. So this is my mission. So keep pushing, have some fun, and I see you in the next video. Thanks for watching and bye.